When it comes to home surveillance system, Synology and UniFi Protect are two very popular choices. I happen to own both and I like both. In this video, let me share my experience, try to do some comparison from purely home users perspective. I'm going to use the following criteria to do the comparison. As a home user, cost is always one of the top factors. For a surveillance system, the cost is not just the hardware itself. It includes the cost when you run your system. It includes the cost to purchase the cameras. So I'm going to break it down to several sub-factors, if you will. And I will compare the build qualities, mention something about the features. In the end, let's talk about something which some home users may care, some may not. So first, license and subscription. The subscription fees are something most home users want to avoid. That's why Synology and UniFi Protect are so popular, because they don't charge you subscription fees. That's good news. For Synology, for each camera you hook up, you need to pay license fee. That's one-time license fee, but you need to pay it. For UniFi Protect, there's no license fee. The license fee for Synology is about $50 per camera. I never seen the license on sale. This is just some example page from B&H. You can see if you just buy one license, it's more than 50, but if you buy 8, it's about $40. Later, I will use two typical configurations to give you some concept when it comes to configure a whole system. What's the total cost? What's the cost of just for license? I am in the Synology surveillance station. Let me launch the license application. As you can see, there are two types of licenses. First is the so-called default license. Each Synology NAS will come with a license for 2 cameras. Regardless how cheap or how expensive your NAS is, it's always licensed for 2 cameras. Some people will go with a approach which is they buy the super cheap Synology models. I believe there's a $99 for 1 bay Synology NAS. They will simply buy that, and because it comes with license for 2 cameras, in their opinion, basically they get the hardware for free, because if they buy license for 2 cameras, the cost is already about $100. So there are 3 apparent problems. First, the license is not permanent license. If your device breaks in the future, you will lose the license. The second thing is, to make it effective, you have to make your NAS online all the time. As long as it goes offline, you will lose the license for those 2 cameras. The third problem is considering the electricity bill. So whether it's worth all the hassles, anyway you only get a hardware for 1 bay NAS, whether it's worth the additional electricity bill every year. Those are the 3 apparent cons I can think of. I had 5 NAS, so originally I had license for 10 cameras, but several days ago one of my Synology NAS devices broke, so now I only have license for 8. Okay, so that's the first default license. You don't need to pay anything extra, you get it by default. The next type of license is what you need to pay. In my case, I have 3 8 license numbers, so I have in total 24 permanent license. Permanent means even in the future I won't use this particular NAS anymore. If I switch to any other one, I can simply transfer the license to the new device. Okay, we talk about the license fee for Synology. Because UniFi Protect doesn't require license fees for cameras, apparently for this factor, UniFi wins. Let's move on to next category. Now let's compare the camera compatibility. In the right, you can see the ubiquitous cameras which are being sold on their online store. There are just 10 of them listed. if you exclude this one and this one, which are not really for home users, exclude this doorbell and then exclude this Wi-Fi camera, you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras left. Even though they are very good cameras, apparently you have very limited choices. If you check the left side, this is the Synology IP camera support list. These are the supported brands and models. There are tons of them. Even if your specific cameras, they are not listed here, there are big chance that you can make them work in the ONVIF mode. Apparently, Synology wins when it comes to compatibility. Next, let's talk about cost. Because in UniFi Protect world, you have very limited choices when it comes to NVR. Here, I will only compare two very typical configurations. First, let's consider a 4-bay unit. Let's assume you only need 4 cameras. Each camera is 4K. We want to exclude the hard drives because it's not a factor. For both, you can choose the same hard drives. For Synology, for a 4-bay NAS, if it's a Plus product line, it's about $450. Then you need a license for 4 cameras. It doesn't matter it's 4K or not, you need to pay about $200. When it comes to cameras, because Synology is compatible with so many different cameras, you can even pick maybe a $50 4K camera. But here, let me pick a reasonable price for a decent camera. Let's say $100. It's a little bit more than $1,000. When it comes to UniFi, there's only one option for NVR. That's the 4-bay UNVR, and it's not the Pro version. As you can see, it doesn't have a LCD, and it's only one U unit. It's rack mount. And then because it's UniFi, you don't need to pay license for camera. Here, I choose the non-Pro version, the 4K generation, $200 each. You may ask, hold on a second, it's not fair. For Synology, you pick a non-rack mount version. For UniFi, it's a rack mount version. Because this video is about home users' choices. For Synology, I don't think many home users will choose the rack mount version. But for UniFi, you have no choices. There's only rack mount version. That's a difference. So then what's the total cost? It's $1,100. Almost the same as Synology. Let's move on to the next option. Let's check a 7-bay version. You may ask, why 7-bay? Why not 6-bay, 8-bay? As I mentioned, because we are comparing Synology with UniFi, the highest end UniFi NVR is the UNVR Pro. It only has 7-bay, so that's why it's already the best UniFi can do here. The 8-bay Synology NAS will cost you $1,000. It's rarely on sale. You need a license for 8 cameras. It's about $400. And then you need 8 4K cameras. The total is about $2,200. When it comes to UniFi, you will save a lot on NVR. It's much cheaper than Synology NAS. You only need $500. You will save the license for camera, but you will pay more for camera. The total is almost the same as Synology. So as you can see, no matter it's Synology or UniFi, to have a system with similar configuration, the cost is almost the same. Next, let's move on to hardware build quality. I have to stress the point I mentioned previously. Here in this video, I'm only going to talk about the Synology non-rack mount NAS units. I know Synology has rack mount devices and it's totally different story when it comes to hardware build quality, but because this video is more from home user perspective, most home users won't buy the Synology rack mount units for apparent reasons. When it comes to UniFi Protect, you have no choices. The NVR, UNVR Pro, they are both rack mount. On the screen, you see 3 example Synology NAS, which I own. First one is the so-called Plus version, and the other 2 are non-Plus. As long as it's not rack mount, the outer box or the chassis is partial metal, partial plastic. Build is a little bit flimsy. In the past several years, one of my Plus Synology NAS was sent back for replacement within warranty, and then it broke again out of warranty. I had to repair it by myself, and recently it just died. At least in my experience, Synology's build quality is not super good. Then let's take a look at UniFi. On the screen in the middle, you see the 7-bay UniFi UNVR Pro. It's all metal chassis. There's a small LCD screen. You can display some important information such as temperature, fan speed, and there are two ports. One is RJ45, the other one is SFP. Super solid and very good design, very heavy, built like a tank. I really like the hardware design of the UniFi UNVR Pro. And you know what? We already talked about the price. This unit is only about half the price of the Synology NAS you just saw 1 minute ago. Now let's move on to surveillance features. On the screen, left side, you see this Synology surveillance station, and in the right, you see UniFi Protect. You may notice the Synology one is not web browser because its web-based surveillance station UI doesn't support 4K camera. To show all the live views, I have to launch the Windows or Mac based application, so it's a hassle. The UniFi Protect works perfectly under web browser. Other than that, I have no complaints about either system when it comes to features. On the internet, on YouTube, you can find many videos introducing their detailed features one by one, so I won't waste your time here. At least in my opinion, they are good enough for home usage. It's time to talk about non-surveillance features. That's something you cannot avoid when you compare Synology with UniFi Protect. This is one of my Synology NAS. As you can see, I put my frequently used applications on the desktop. Virtual machine, I use its storage for sure because it's a NAS. I use its Docker, very useful active backup to back up my EXXI virtual machines. If you click the applications, you can find even more features. Because it's a NAS, of course, its focus is on storage. But if you don't have other application servers, this is a pretty good alternative. You can run Docker, you can run virtual machine. You can also download many packages or applications provided by Synology or third party. Synology is not just a surveillance system, it's even not just a NAS, it's a full-featured application server, if you will. But when it comes to UniFi Protect, you can see this is its UI. What you can do is just for surveillance camera management, configuration, and the live view and the recording, everything is focused on surveillance. Even though the hardware looks like a NAS, unfortunately, you can only use the surveillance related features. For non-surveillance features, of course, Synology wins. Let's move on to next part, the RAID and backup. In my opinion, this is the weakest point for UniFi. Let's talk about the details. On the screen, you see two UIs. The left one is for Synology, right one is for UniFi Protect. Synology is a NAS, so it has everything we as home user need for storage, including backup, RAID settings. It supports all the popular RAID types and it supports SSD cache. You can configure it in whatever way you want. But when it comes to UniFi, this is the simple, clean feature provided by UniFi. It tries to hide all the technical details because it's so simple. It brings more confusions. You won't see any terms you expect when it comes to RAID. You don't see RAID 0, RAID 5, those type of types. And it only asks you whether you want one disk or half of disk, whether you want hot spare. That's it. And you don't know the RAID type. You have no way to change the RAID type. I do have a UniFi RAID explained video. If you are interested, you can check that. I don't like the way UniFi implements implement the RAID feature, because most users, even home users, we want to have some type of control when it comes to storage. So please give us the flexibility. Even though UniFi doesn't have all the RAID features, at least it has something, right? But when it comes to backup, that's the worst for UniFi, because it has none. It's unbelievable. I have to complain that because so many years passed, UniFi Protect still doesn't have a basic functionality, which is to back up the recordings. Let's check what Synology provides when it comes to backup. So of course, it has the system replication. You can replicate the whole system to another Synology. And it has the hyper backup. You have different ways to back up to remote system. When it comes to surveillance system, you can back up the camera configurations and you can back up the recordings. You have many different options, so it's super flexible. We are almost at the end of the comparison. Here, I want to talk something about the mobile apps. Both have very good mobile apps. I'm happy with either one. But here, I want to just focus on one thing. The initial launching time. You need to wait till you see the live view. To me, it's very important, because think about it. If someone is at your porch or you hear something outside, you want to see what happened, then you take out your phone, you want to check the live view. If you have to wait for a long time, then why bother? You can directly go outside to take a look, right? So my expectation is I want to wait as little as possible time so that I can see almost immediately the live view. This is Synology. Long wait time. Okay, 5 seconds, it start appearing. After 8 seconds, I see the complete first screen. This is UniFi Protect. Okay, within 2 seconds, I already see everything. About the mobile app comparison, if you are wondering, for both applications, I use the local connection. So for Synology, I directly connect to the NAS without go through Synology website. For UniFi Protect, I use a local connection. It's not remotely routed via UniFi. Yes, granted, for Synology, I have much more cameras. I can understand it may take longer time to load, but remember, we are not talking about displaying all cameras in one screen. We are talking about the initial screen. If the camera number is really the root cause for the slow performance for Synology app, I believe they have something to improve already. Okay, scalability. Let's check their website. For Synology, it has many storage-related products. It even has dedicated surveillance hardware. But remember, this video is just from home user perspective, right? So let's focus on NAS and only focus on the desktop NAS. Even we are just talking about the desktop NAS, you already see so many different choices from Synology. If you choose the Plus version or higher, many of them can be upgraded with higher speed NIC, and you can upgrade the memory, you can add SSD cache. So a lot of things you can do in terms of hardware itself. If you have multiple units, you can even set up high availability. The scalability is much higher. Then the scalability is much better than UniFi Protect. In the end of the online store, you see only 3 NVR: the Pro, the non-Pro, and the Cloud Key. Of course, there's another one, which is UDM Pro. You can also use it for UniFi Protect. But basically, if we talk about multiple bay options, you only have 2 choices. This is what you get. You have no way to add memory. You have no way to upgrade the NIC. That's it. Even though they are much cheaper than Synology NAS, and the build quality, in my opinion, they are much better than Synology desktop version. But when it comes to scalability, apparently it's very bad. This is the overall results of the comparison. Different people has different opinions or depending on the specific use cases. But for me as a home user, this is how I feel, and this is the important categories to me, because I cannot persuade myself giving up either of them. So I end up with using both, and I am happy with both. Thank you for watching.